Yes, look who's with us. The bobbing heads of Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. The question, of course, is going to be who will be bobbing with a smile at the end of tonight. It's still too early to make a prediction, but I can ask the real people on the panel here now who are not bobbing their heads. Exactly right. Ashley, it's okay. You can bob a little bit. Hi.
Hi.
Ashley Arancibia, right? A Chilean-American exchange student.
Yeah.
Right? It's good to have you on the show. Stephen Kuhn is with us. Our viewers may know Stephen. He's been on some of our shows before. American and Iraq War veteran, correct? Stephen, it's good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Melissa Dreyer, our fashion journalist. She's going to give us the... Let me start with you, Melissa. Everyone assumes that someone who is a fashion journalist would have to be against Trump and be for Hillary.
Yes. So, from a fashion point of view, we're going to have a bad hair year no matter what happens.
I was going to say, yeah, how are you ever going to...
No, this is a problem, but it has nothing to do with fashion. And
you ever going to be able to wash that Trump right out of your hair?
I hope so, but I'm not. We're not sure about that, are we? And even if he does lose, he's still going to be around.
Well, and that's the point, right? Stephen, maybe you can speak to that. You're a Trump supporter, is that correct?
I am an American first, and I look at the attributes of both candidates, and I don't want to say I'm staunch Trump or I'm staunch Clinton, but I do support the more conservative roles. I do. I think what's key here is to look at what's going to be left behind. Okay, Trump is one person. Okay, we have the Senate, we have the Congress, and we have a lot of work to do. Okay, and there's a movement behind Trump, whether or not it's valid, whether or not it's what we want in the country. There is a movement.
Well, can you define the movement?
Look, I'm a voter. You know, I'm not a politician.
But how do you understand that movement, though?
Discontent. There's discontent with government, discontent with society in general, as far as the rich, the power, whatever. I mean, which is funny, because that's usually a Democrat trait. You know, that they're looking to quell the power, so to say.
But isn't it funny that if you're against the power and the money, that you should rally behind a person who's about power and money?
I think if there's no one else there, this is why we're choosing him. I think it could have been anyone.
Yeah, but I mean, how many Republican candidates were there at the beginning of the race? I mean, there was a plethora of candidates, right, including Jeb Bush,
right,
and they were all blown out of the water by him. There's something going on there that has nothing to do with the Republicans, right?
We were speaking before. It's sort of a breakdown in communication in our country, and also there's very few borders of what to say, what is allowed to say anymore, what's proper, what's politically correct, what do people allow themselves to believe and say anymore. And I think Trump just disobeyed every etiquette rule you could imagine, and he picked up a lot of followers like that. Because let's face it. We go to most American towns, there's not much etiquette going on there anymore. There's not much people that really, you know, in let's say, rural America, there's not much going on there as far as, you know, hey, how are you? Let me help you. It's me. And I think he touched on that, which is sort of sad, but it's there and we have to deal with it.
Do you agree with that?
When this comes up, I just keep thinking about what does it mean to be an American. Like you said before, you know, I'm an American first, but to me that means something a little different. You know, and I'm speaking from the perspective of a minority, saying that it's difficult to say what an American is at this point, and that just comes down to also what values are we protecting then? Who is the American that we're protecting? And this brings me, I go from her job at Chase Bank after working for like 25 years, and she said, you know, I'm someone that worked and had all these things that I thought I racked up in the system. But then when it came down to I need assistance now, the economy wasn't working, and I needed assistance to be able to get by. And they said, we can't help you because you don't fit this criteria. And she's like, so all these years for nothing, and I can't even get anything out of my country. And it's very interesting because it's like you don't want to help this person that's not American, that's not an immigrant, but yet you don't want to help this American person either. So it becomes a question of who do you want to help? And throughout this whole race, I've asked myself so many times, what are the goals, what are the ideals that we want for this country? Because it seems between, Hillary Clinton also, who many times, we've just had like a big surge of minorities voters recently. And that's really interesting to me because it's like almost, they just came in and they had to do it.
But that's the thing. Were they voting because they're patriotic Americans, or were they voting because they were, pissed off by what Trump had said about Mexicans?
Protest votes.
What's the motivation there, right? And that gets back to the, what does it mean to be an American?
I think it's this last-minute fear of making sure you don't end up with the worst evils, so you go with the lesser. But it's funny that it happened at the last minute because it was almost very cartoonish, I would say.
Yeah.
It's definitely a protest vote. I think that's clear to anyone, and let's say the Democrats pushing it as a protest vote. Do you want him? It's more or less what they're saying. So I mean,
but
come
that's
on,
valid, no?
Of course it's valid.
Yeah.
Of course it's valid, but they're pushing
valid,
it.
But isn't also what the Trump people
Of course they are.
saying?
But we're talking about the minority vote right now.
Yeah, okay.
And that's what I'm saying is that this whole he said, she said, look at them, look at us. Where are the issues? Where are the issues? The real issues. Let's look at foreign policy. Foreign policy. We're sitting in Central Europe right now, where foreign policy from either one of those could dictate our future in a very, very difficult way, and no one's talking about it. Why? Because domestic politics in America are the big issue. Foreign policy, yeah, okay. Foreign policy in America means what? Go to war or don't go to war. That's pretty much it, as far as domestic policy goes, or domestic understanding of foreign policy goes. And here we sit in the middle of it all. And it could mean the world to us, whether or not Hillary or Trump gets involved. If we look at their attributes as far as foreign policy goes, let's say, for instance, Trump wants to be friends with Russia, a good old boy system, I'm not so much for that. Hillary clearly stated she's going to stand off against Russia. So, they're the things that I look at more than, let's say, the person. It's important for me what happens to the world that we live in.
Yeah.
But what kind of discourse have we had about any issues, domestic or there's been no discourse, I'd say, for 20 years. There's been an absolute standoff, a stalemate. Maybe I live in this country. I've lived here for 31 years, where compromise, whether it gets a little boring or a little slow, or it doesn't move fast enough, or it doesn't get places fast enough, but there is a certain willingness where there's been the most ridiculous level of party politics going on for the longest time. And that's why, for many, Hillary became the lesser evil, the people who were interested in Bernie, because that would have been irresponsible. There's no way that man could have governed, given the system that we're in.
We heard from a young man, 19 years old, earlier tonight, saying that the reason he is a Trump supporter is because Trump does not use the same language that all politicians use. He's not slick. He's not. His statements aren't prefabricated, and he's vulgar, and he puts it in your face and gets away with it.
I mean,
Maybe
that's
does.
really, he does get away with it, but he says nothing that's worth supporting, and that's this except.
Is that an issue? I mean, is that one of our national issues that are going to affect the future of our country? Possibly the way he speaks to somebody, but I think we as a nation are, look, the power doesn't lie with the president. People seem to think in the rest of the world that when Trump gets elected, he's going to change everything, or Hillary's going to change everything. It's the Senate and the Congress that have.
You said in small towns in America now, people aren't nice, right? I mean, it's all about me, me, me. Well, I mean, is it Donald Trump? Isn't he the embodiment of narcissism?
He is, but this is before. It didn't change suddenly since he came to be a candidate. This has been developing for years. I think what you spoke about as well. It's been separation. We need to see commonalities with each other and not the differences. We are so hell bent on differences every single day, every single newscast, and every single person that gets on TV talks about the difference. We need to find commonalities as Americans. We are a nation that we're always against diversity and always fought diversity.
I do agree with Brian, though, that it is something positive in a sense to have a caricature that really does show the way that we do. Like you said, we need to find commonalities. Well, it's because of people like Trump who show us how different we think we are to each other in the same country. Once again, this definition of American, what else does that mean? I have no idea.
Great point.
Yeah, I mean, but who's to blame? We're going to throw it back to the studio in just a second. But who's to blame for the fact that we don't have proper discourse anymore? I mean, is there a party? Is there a person? Is there a force?
It's a cultural
diversion.
mess.
Yeah.
There's
Delusion.
there's been a dumbing down of everything.
But we have the opportunity this year in this election to be able to say no. There is somebody to blame for the downfall of the decorum in American discourse, American political discourse. That's not existing anymore. If you have a person that's just throwing out all of these phrases and really just these rallies of hatred, and there was this video circulating around. Actually, I don't remember if it was like Now This Politics or one of those that was circulating around my campus too, where they were comparing the Trump rallies to rallies in the 1960s during the time of segregation, and it's things like that that just show you that how wrong this discourse is, and if there's one thing that it's doing, it's also not addressing these problems. It's just
What it does, it brings up the problems, and I think it's we like I said, we need to find ways to work with these things. This brings up a point. You would never had this thought and never would have thought like that if you wouldn't have seen that. So let's look at the good things and let's find the commonalities.
That's right. That's why we're bringing people together here, too, right? Trump supporters, Hillary supporters, they don't usually sit together. Statistics show
People don't talk to
they
each
stay
other.
in their silos.
Americans.
Except when they come
I
here.
walked in, I was wearing red, white, and blue. They heard soldier, they said Trump right away. And two people walked away.
we talked about that too, right?
And look, their heads are bobbing at the same rate. So see, we are finding commonalities. All right, Sarah, let's send it back to you in the studio.